President Kayima. I am the chairperson of the Uganda Wildlife Society. This 13th annual general meeting, which is really your forum over the last year. As it is the practice in UWS, is how best Uganda and Uganda wildlife coexist in harmony. That is what we are going to discuss this afternoon. And it will be presented by none other than my friend John Makombo. And please forgive me for that presentation.
My name is John Makombo.
Into the details of the meeting is a discussion on how communities can coexist with wildlife. And I've tried to analyze and outline a number of ways how that can be done, but definitely we still have challenges which I wish we are going to discuss together at the end of the presentation. Reserve was gazetted. And so after that, then we came to the gazettement of the national parks. That was in 1952. That was the first one. And definitely by that time, there was a lot of wildlife in Uganda, with the kings identifying most of these areas which are gazetted as hunting areas for themselves as a hobby. And then later on, in 1996, the Uganda Wildlife Authority was formed out of the merger between Uganda National Parks and the Game Department. And that was as the result of government realizing that the Game Department, which was a government, totally a government arm, and Uganda National Parks, which was a parastatal, the two being government bodies were just doing the same job. So government decided that the two departments be merged into one for effective management of wildlife. Now, currently, that map represents the protected areas of Uganda. We have got 10 national parks and 12 wildlife reserves, plus a number of community wildlife areas. What you see in red, the reds are the national parks, and the blues are the reserves. The greens are the community wildlife areas. If you realize, most of these are along the borders, and they are actually connections. I didn't come with a map of Congo, but if you have a map of Congo, we have got the Virunga National Park, which connects Rwenzori and Semliki. And that Semliki National Park, this is the Rwenzori Semliki National Park, and it also connects to Volcano National Park in Rwanda. On this side, we have the Southern Sudan protected areas, and this side we have the Mount Elgon National Park on the Kenyan side. So you realize that our protected areas are actually areas of international value because they host the biodiversity that is both owned by Ugandans and the international community. And so with 11% of the country, we are one of the giants. I think if the president gave you 11% of Uganda, you'd be a very rich man, especially if you look at where we stand. We own oil, gold, and so many other things that are found in the protected areas. We have, as I've said, we have protected areas of international importance. We have got 2 World Heritage Sites, the Rwenzoris and the Windies. We have 3 mandated biosphere. We have Elgon, Queen Elizabeth, and the Murchison Falls. And then a number of very important Ramsar sites. Those are the wetlands. in Queen, in Murchison Falls, and Lake Mburo and Rwenzori. We have got 5 ecological zones, very, very important. And we also have 53 of the, actually about 53. Currently now we have 400 individuals of the mountain gorillas. Recently we had about 340, and the recent census revealed that we have been doing a good job, and now there are 400 individuals. I think that's good, only in Windi. And we still have more in Mugahinga. So I think Uganda Wildlife Authority is doing a good job. These protected areas also host about 10% of the global bird biodiversity, which is equivalent to 50% of Africa's bird biodiversity. And so out of the 1,500 East African bird life, Uganda is representing 73. So you can see how important our protected areas are. We also host 7% of the global mammals, which are actually in Uganda. 39 out of the global mammals, 39% is in Africa, and so then we have 19% and 14% of the amphibians and reptiles. And so why are we keeping this wildlife? A number of people, most especially communities, think that these are areas that they need for economic development, areas that they need to settle in. Even people have gone further to say we have grabbed their land. Recently, the Basongoras were in Queen trying to reclaim their land. Currently, the Karamajongs, I don't know whether we have any Karamajong here, they have been actually going to the president that they need back their protected areas in Karamoja. Likewise, when you go to Noya, you still get the same story. But then why are we interested in this? Basically, if you look at Uganda as a country, as a nation, we identify ourselves with wildlife. We have got the crested crane, which is part of our emblem. We have got the kob, actually, as part of the coat of arms. And then we also associate ourselves with a gorilla. The moment you mention a gorilla out there, then the international community will know that you're coming from Uganda. We also have a number of exceptional features. If you go to our protected areas, you realize that we have got the snow caps, and these snow capped peaks on the equator actually they hold a magnificent amount of glacier. And I think in East Africa, also in Africa, actually Rwenzori is the only mountain that hosts the biggest amount of glacier along the equator. We are also a country that's actually endowed. If you look at our biodiversity, it's not also found elsewhere, and we think this is a resource that we must keep on ourselves. Our wildlife is an economic contributor. Currently, actually by 2011, we had about 1.1 million tourists, not 1.1 tourists, 1.1 million tourists. And these ones contributed about 805 million US dollars, which is 9.2 of Uganda's gross domestic product. And I think if you look at those, at the graphs, you will realize that our statistics, our tourist numbers continue to increase. And that means actually we are going to generate more money. And this money is coming from the protected areas, which are being kept under the Uganda Wildlife Authority. Most of these areas are also water sources, sources for industrial purposes. We have got 3 power dams in Kasese, where water is running, actually generating, power is generated from River Mubuku, which has a source from Mount Rwenzori. We also have the Fisheries Department, which is supported by the wildlife conservation areas, Lake George, Lake Edward, and a number of other lakes, Albert. All these depend on the Rwenzoris. Also, when you get to Elgon, part of the waters that flow westwards end up in Lake Victoria and contributes to the protection of the Fisheries Department. That's the same thing with Choga as for those protected areas in the Karamoja region. Definitely, protected areas provide a base for education. We have got a number of institutions at the protected area level, which provide research and data for management of wildlife. And then the protected areas also play a major role in the protection of the communities from disaster. If you look at the next slide, you realize that this is a landslide from Bududa. And this resulted from the fact that the slopes of Mount Elgon have already been encroached and they have been left bare, and because of that, there is no water retention, and because of loss of protection, the soils are loose, being volcanic in nature, and so this led to the loss of a number of people who we are aware about. Climate modification, most especially if you go to some of these areas with the protected areas, they have forests, they have actual vegetation, they are vegetated, and these are a source of water vapor that contributes to rainfall. Most of these areas are actually centers of high rainfall and therefore a concentration of agriculture. Go to the Rwenzoris, the Kigezi area, Mount Elgon. These are areas that we are actually neighboring and are sources of good agricultural production. Mitigation of global warming, definitely as carbon sinks, and then the control of soil erosion through vegetation cover and nutrient contribution. Then we have those protected areas as reservoirs of resources. These days we are talking of cultural values. So cultural values, when you look for indigenous medicine, you can't go anywhere other than the protected areas. We have got historical cultural attachments. I'm sure most of you have got clans. You are affiliated to clans. And so you might be a buffalo, you might be, some of you are a fumbe. What is a fumbe? A fox. Is it a fox? Okay, it's not a fox. It must be something like what? A pangolin? No. Then I've seen that you don't know wildlife. What? Anyway, what I mean is so many of us here are associated with the wildlife. And so we need to conserve it so that our future generations can actually see our relatives in the future. Most of this is the homes to our ancestors. Protected areas play that important role. Some of us were at one time part of the protection, protected areas, but moved out, and our ancestors are buried in those protected areas. Archaeological and the human origin, areas like Queen Elizabeth, you go to Matheniko, those are areas where you see evidences of human activity some years back. Then cultural sites in these areas, we have got, for example, in Elgon, there are areas where they sacrifice. In Bugungu, there is one Muganda who always goes, every year, actually goes to Bugungu to go and sacrifice. That's the same thing with the Bakonjo. They also do sacrifice in the hills. Support to agriculture, I've already talked of rains, the pollinators. We have irrigation in Muvuku. Then control of vectors. And control of vectors, one time actually, I was in Kasese and the park across in the Virungas, communities in Uganda went and encroached. Now, that destroyed the habitat and the food for the eagles. And every day, these eagles crossed into Uganda to come and pick the chicken that was actually at home in Uganda. So, by protecting wildlife and their habitats, we are actually protecting ourselves from the pests. I have also another photograph which I wanted to show you. This buffalo here. This buffalo harbors a number of ticks on itself. But because we have got that little egret, it keeps picking those ticks. And by doing so, it's actually protecting a human being and the livestock from being invaded by those ticks. Otherwise, we would be suffering. Also, protected areas are areas where there is a lot of good relaxation. If you are stressed in Kampala, where do you go? You leave Kampala. The next destination will be the protected area, and these are the facilities that you're going to enjoy while you're there. There are natural stress relievers. Some of you who have not been to protected areas, the moment you go there, you feel that you are relieved from the stress that you have in town. Town here, there is a lot of pollution. In the protected areas, it is just fresh air. And there are lots of wonders. When you're there, you cannot save your laughter and your amusement. Definitely, you have to laugh. You can see these are all beauties that we need to protect so that our future generation can see. We have got a biblical responsibility. All of you are Christians, and God gave us this wildlife to protect. And so most of you, I think, have sinned on that. You are not protecting wildlife, and I think we need to do that. We have got national economic stability. I've already shown you how much we are generating. And then employment. A lot of employment. If you look at the Uganda Wildlife Society, it is also generating its origin from there. The hoteliers and all those other people. So we need to ask ourselves then, is it possible with all these challenges that we are facing in Uganda? Can we really coexist? Can we coexist? And I've identified a number of issues that impact on coexistence. One of them being the wildlife outside protected areas. Actually, currently, we host about 50% of our wildlife outside the protected areas. And so out there, you get people complaining about problem animals. Your birds are eating our crops, the elephants are trembling. And so there is a lot of conflict that's created between wildlife and the human population. Then we have population pressure as one of the issues that we are looking at. And under population pressure, people need more land, they want to settle down. And because they need more land, they actually encroach on protected areas. If you double click on that, good, that one, it cannot open. Sorry, we can probably, I installed it on that. But that has a photo of Mount Elgon. When you look at that photo, the photo, there is a big area which has been encroached from Mount Elgon. And because of that, that's why we are getting those landslides up in Mount Elgon in Bududa. Then there are no buffer zones anymore. And I had a boundary of wind here, which you can't see. And the boundary, you can actually see a clear cut between protected area and community land. So we don't have any buffer zones anymore. And because of that, we have got lots of conflicts. We have changes in cultural practices. Originally, the Bahima were pastoralists, but now they are changing their behavior in terms of cultural practices. Even the Karamajongs are now cultivating, so we have a challenge in keeping wildlife surviving. Get outside there, these are illegal fires, then communities keep harvesting one by one, and this is actually contributing to the low numbers of wildlife problem animals. Those are a big issue that actually are hampering this coexistence. And then migration. And under migration, you have elephants coming from southern Sudan, entering Uganda. And as they come to Sudan, to Uganda, they pass through community land. And as they move, because for them, they don't know that actually that's not their area. They keep harvesting the crop from the gardens. And that is a problem, big one. Then we have got poaching, which depletes wildlife. I think we shall talk about that later. And then illegal grazing. We have poverty issues. And the poverty issues definitely force people inside the protected areas because they need to survive. And then we have insufficient benefits coming from protected areas. At the moment, there are no benefits. People look at protected areas as a burden to them because this is land that they would be utilizing. And then we have got a disease resulting from the interaction between wildlife and communities. This photograph is a photo of hippos which died as a result of anthrax. And if you are, some of you have been to Lake Mburo, you have had these cases of zebras also dying out of anthrax. Let's continue. And so with the interaction between wildlife and livestock, you get livestock dying as well as wildlife. Likewise, there is that cross-transmission from livestock to wildlife. So that creates another conflict. So I've looked at ways how we can coexist. And one of the ways is through collaborative management. And this is mainly for wildlife outside the protected areas. And it means that actually by collaborative management, we are protecting communities from some of these conflicts, which I have already highlighted. And it is also another means we can get money, making money for the communities, for economic development, and mainly through the use rights. Use rights, we have got a number of classes for use rights. We have hunting, sport hunting, what we call sport hunting. We have farming, we have ranching, we have trade, we have got education, we have got general extraction. All these are areas that we can use to do collaborative management. Then definitely, as a result of collaborative management, we have community benefit as an entity and at individual level. And this creates incentives for people to have the attitude, the positive attitude of coexisting, of assuring that wildlife survives and stays on the globe. I've got a number of a few photos. This one is a ranch. This is a community ranch. Zebras and cows are grazing together. And when this person wants to harvest, he harvests the zebra, leaves the cow, he sells the cow, and you can imagine when there is sport hunting here, he also earns from sport hunting. We have got crocodile farms. These are areas where communities are benefiting from. And then we have sport hunting. That's a buffalo, which is already sport hunted down. And this buffalo was killed on someone's farm. And this person actually earned that money. Then the other form of collaborative management are the general resource extractions. These are reeds extracted, actually harvested from the parks. We have got revenue out of sport hunting. because I want to show you that there is evidence of a coexistence. If we are together, we can actually earn a lot. This is the Lake Mburo. Right from 2001, we introduced sport hunting, and the communities have been generating money. There is money that goes to government, money that goes to community associations for community development. There is money that goes to an individual as a landowner. So currently, you can see how much individuals have earned. These are dollars, this is Uganda shillings. These are individuals. And you can imagine by this 2002, we had not started the program of landowners, but we realized that the landowner was missing out. And so we instituted the landowner benefit, and currently now they have earned this. You can see this is UWA. The landowners are even earning more than what we are earning out of here. This is the Community Protected Area Institution, which is a community institution that monitors what is going around. And then the association, you can see how much they have earned, and then the local government. So it's an area where we can actually get money from and coexist together. And because of this, communities have tolerated staying with the wildlife within the Lake Mburo ranges, and actually the population of Lake Mburo, the wildlife is increasing in number. I have also graphically represented that to show you how much we are earning from Lake Mburo. Next. Then this is the Karamoja region. We started in 2009, but as of 2011, we already have communities earning already 29,000, which is a lot of money. This time, because they are within our protected areas, we tried to harvest more money from them. Then we have the districts of Moroto, Kotido. They are also earning a little bit of money. Excuse me. Yes, next. So, problem animals. Problem animals are a real cause of conflict, actually, and they are the major source of conflict currently. And these animals, they are life-threatening. They also damage property, and most especially in our community, they destroy crops. And I looked at how we can actually coexist with those animals. I looked at trench excavation and maintenance as one of those strategies that we can use in order for us to exist with wildlife, because there are no buffer zones anymore. So if we excavate trenches, sometimes we scare shoot, sometimes we capture and translocate, especially when it comes to Lake Victoria. There are a number of crocodiles that are living in those waters. So for those such animals, crocodiles, we just pick from them from Lake Victoria and translocate them to Murchison Falls. Then the elimination of those which cannot be controlled, especially the vermin, and then the construction of barriers, and we also look at staff training as key, because if you have to capture, you need someone who is trained. And if you have to monitor, if you have to scare shoot, you need someone who is trained. This is a buffalo wall in Mugahinga National Park. And this is actually community land. The other one is the park. With this buffalo, now, the buffalo wall, the animals are able to stay inside, and the communities are able to cultivate immediately outside there. Before that, we used to have lots of conflicts. I've also got a trench from Queen Elizabeth. On this side is the park. This side is the community area. But currently, you can see how much the communities are now harvesting as a result of that trench. If that trench wasn't there, you would be getting lots of conflicts on this side. In other words, currently, communities are coexisting with the park. I've looked at poverty and poaching. Poverty basically forces communities to go inside because they have no other resource. And because of that, they definitely deplete the resources within the national parks. And once communities start engaging in poaching, then you know that's a big problem. And what is most Hatting is when you get this kind of age getting engaged in poaching. That means from childhood, the only activity that a child knows is actually going into the park to get wildlife. And so you can even see Mzee up there. Mzee, you can see how he's dressed, and the only way he can survive is getting into the park to go and get a plank of timber so that he can sell it and get survival. And some of the solutions, therefore, I'm looking at creation of employment, and employment is in so many forms. Creation of livelihood projects and ecotourism activities. If you go down, you will see that there are a number of areas. This is basically what someone can do as a local person. If you cultivate, get your mangoes, get your fruits, these avocados, you will harvest a lot of money currently, because there are so many hotels that need these things. Everyone in every home now, we need avocados. These are beehives. There's a lot of market for the honey. And then sometimes we get money and give to communities for livelihood improvement at the household level. So these three actually contribute to a household income level. And the other one is just employment. All those are local communities from Windi. They have been employed in Windi. They are not actually people from very far. Other forms of benefits which I'm looking at that can change attitude so that communities can live with wildlife. We have things like roads. If you create a road, people will sell their produce, they will cultivate, concentrate on their gardens, and they will get income out of that. Next. We have got benefits like lodges, which we have created for communities. There is one in Windi, actually the Eco Lodge, very magnificent, this is it. And then we have campgrounds, which are a little bit lower than that. This dam is in Ngoro again, and that resulted from the fact that wildlife was destroying people's dams. So as a benefit, he's moving faster than me. We made sure that we kept excavating dams for communities so that they can see a benefit out of wildlife. The other one is a bridge, which was also sponsored by revenue from the park. Next. I have also given you this data on revenue sharing as another form which can create revenue for the communities so that we can have attitude change. So far you can see that over 6 billion has already been passed over to the community since the revenue sharing program started. And this, in some areas, has created a lot of impact, especially like Mburo, Windi, Maxon Falls, and Mugahinga. But with Mugahinga now, the gorillas kept moving, so actually the revenue base has also gone down. Next. We have other ways we can educate our young generation, and once we educate, definitely attitudes will change. I'm sure some of you here were great hunters, but because you have been educated, you cannot go back anymore. You are already in another atmosphere, in another environment. So we need to educate our children. Then community awarenesses are very key because they are attitude tools. And then we need to contribute to disease control and then appropriate agriculture. If you look at this photo, assuming you have 1 acre and you are keeping this kind of hut, that means actually you won't have anywhere to graze it. If you are near the protected area, the only alternative is for you to take it inside there. And so we need players in this. These players range from communities to NGOs. We have the local government, because the local government will play a leadership role. Then other players like partners in the NGO world, those ones are going to provide technical support, financial support, and also they contribute to policy formulation. We have the private sector, who are the hoteliers. If we handle them properly, they will help us set these hotels, and because of that, there will be employment. And so people will be transformed. The local communities, definitely we need the support of these local communities in problem animal control. As the local leaders, also we need them, infrastructure development, and law enforcement through community policing, then definitely labor. We have got to engage this private sector people. The auto has got a number of cars, they have hotels, and they can actually do us a good favor. Now, I was looking at community participation. Sometimes there is sabotage. This was a trench which was constructed to deter problem animals. But because communities were selfish, they covered the trench. And because of that, they now cross their cows, the livestock through there, into the park. And due to that, the wildlife also comes out through the same, and they go to the communities, and that creates a conflict. So we need community support generally. Then other players who have got UPDF and the judiciary, because these people need to know the law so that they can help us. Interpol, definitely there is a lot of wildlife trafficking, and as communities poach for those people who are out there, very rich people, we need Interpol to help us out of that. And so, even then, we need a big government support. And so, because of that government support, probably now we need to start sitting with government and say we need to coexist. Wildlife and communities need to coexist. And if we get now money from oil, because we need big support, I think we should be able to say yes. We shall invest in those infrastructure, in those areas which I have highlighted above. And the moment we do that, then we shall be where? We shall engage these people. These are politicians. If we engage them and we get something out of them, then we shall be on top of things. And so once we are on top of things, then we shall be there. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments. But before that happens, we've been trying to do some practical conservation. And Joel is take 20 minutes perhaps to talk about our experiences, and then we have a general discussion.
I'm called Joel Buinza. I'm the project officer in Uganda Wildlife Society. Presentation, I want to show you a small documentary that will take about 15 minutes, and then
wildlife reserve and plan to provide agriculture recorded in the Albert. That will help secure the region's globally unique biological need for resources, have been incentives to overuse and inappropriate management of natural resources in the Albert and cultivators, practicing subsistence farming, some are cattle keepers, while the rest are fishmongers that have seen land conflicts on the lands attributed population explosion. A wide range of population areas are in conflict with animals and game rangers. There are no clear boundaries between
vegetarian and insect. But who has done very well in the wild insect? You are not doing
acts as a buffer zone between Bugon Wildlife Reserve and community land. Some have instead of lives to charge animals.
Now having hippos fighting my people, and to lose the papers, crocodiles eating my people, who also some managers failure of operation. That was in modern years also. People who are on the other side, was the side of the park, who may not go there with the keep. It's just enough, the conclusion.
Conflicting parties, how they can live in harmony. Because as a society, as a Uganda society, we would want people to coexist. We do not want to say that now let these people live or let wildlife live and then people occupy. But we would want to encourage coexistence as one of our values. So how best can Uganda's wildlife and communities adjacent to protected areas coexist in harmony? And what are the current issues in Bulisa? And these issues were raised under our project, Ecosystems Alliance project, which focuses on empowering communities in Bulisa for sustainable natural resource management. The reason why you see those two logos above is Uganda Wildlife Society has a memorandum of understanding with the Bulisa local government. So the MOU binds us to always work together with them and organize them in all our dealings. So I'm Joel Windsor, project officer. Just a small background is that Uganda Wildlife Society under the Ecosystems Alliance is working with 5 resource user communities that were identified through our research initiatives during the baseline study and the needs assessment. And those, they include the crop farmers, the fisher folk, the livestock keepers. We used to call them pastoralists. They said no, we no longer move, so we are now livestock keepers. Wildlife resource dependent communities, or we can call them park adjacent communities, and the oil activities dependent communities, or communities that are within the areas where oil drilling is going on in Bulisa. As you may well know that oil exploration activities are going on in Bulisa. And we realize that these resource users always conflict amongst themselves, but also with resource managers. And we engaged them in a number of discussions where they highlighted or they drafted MOUs that they think can help them coexist. And I'm just going through these MOUs. The first MOU is between UWA, Uganda Wildlife Authority, and the wildlife resource dependent communities, or you can call them park adjacent communities. And it is in a draft form that is for local communities regulated access to wildlife resources in Ugungu Wildlife Reserve and Marchon Falls National Park. And the specific activities and resources that people need from the park include collecting grasses for thatching their houses and for making hay. Because we realize that I think the season is now coming. We have people from Bulisa. The time is coming where all the grass is going to be dried, and so communities may need to rely on hay. And together with the district veterinary officer, we are working out a program to teach communities to make hay out of the grasses, but also to documentary shows that we want them to reduce the numbers of their animals, but you cannot tell them that. So we are encouraging them to only keep the productive stock. I mean, what is the use of having 20 bulls in one crowd? So we want them to, all the old cows that can no longer produce. We want them also to collect firewood for their 12 use. Access fishing grounds. There are some fishing grounds in Marchon Falls National Park. So some of them are breeding grounds, but there are some areas that they can access. Or there are some places, I can give a case of Wanseko, which is a very conflicting area. Probably we may need to look at that. Papyrus harvesting, it was emphasized in the documentary by me and the MP. Tree planting along the buffer zones of Ugungu Wildlife Reserve. They want to keep, do some beekeeping still in the buffer zones, and also harvest some building pods. Some of the moments captured during the drafting of the MOU are those. These were communities from Chigwera, that is where one sector is, and then Viso, sub-county. And you can see that we also involved the Uws staff down here. This is a community wanted from Bugumbu, well gathered to Action Force National Park. And I think that is going to be the major focus for the theme for today. But I also want to share with you the other MOUs that we drafted for also other resource user communities. And we have an MOU between the fishing communities and the beach management units in Ulisa district. And it's in a draft form, and it's basically to promote sustainable fishing methods and gears among the fishing communities in Ulisa. Just highlighted the overall objectives, but the details are in the MOU, which I cannot give now. One is to enhance fishing communities' participation in eliminating illegal fishing gears on Lake Albert, improve their livelihoods, food security, and also economic development through promotion of alternative livelihoods to fishing communities. Because, like we saw in the documentary, that in Congo, they always have fishing holidays. They do fishing for 3 months and then rest for 3 months. While in Uganda, we do fishing throughout. So we want to bring them to that. So when there is a fishing holiday, which other alternatives are the communities going to look at? Otherwise, you may cause anarchy in the entire community if there is no other alternative for them while we are having the fishing holidays. We want to promote good working relations between the BMUs and the fishing community because their relations are not good. We also want to enhance protection of fishing breeding grounds along Lake Albert. We identified like 5, and the communities know them, but they still go there and fish. But as the Uganda Wildlife Society Ecosystem Alliance Project, we have devised means of sensitizing communities and letting them participate in making sure that the breeding grounds are protected. And those are some of the moments captured during the drafting of this MOU. We went to Walukuba and Ikalolo learning site. We privileged the chairman, LC5 also attended, is in this other photo. The other MOU is between the livestock keepers and the crop farmers, and it was also evident in the documentary. And it is a draft MOU promote sustainable farming and also resolve conflicts among the livestock keepers and the crop farmers. The overall objectives are to enable livestock keepers to adopt sustainable livelihood management technologies and practices. Like we want them to begin to change from the extensive grazing to begin supplementing the natural grasses with other forms of feeds to their animals. We want to provide conducive avenues for resolving conflicts, especially between the livestock keepers and the crop farmers. We want to improve their livelihoods, food security, and economic development through provision of market to livestock, and the initiatives are there. For example, currently the Dairy Development Corporation Association, DDA, wants to collect, I think, 1,000. You can tell me the exact. 1,000 liters of milk per day from Ulisa. But currently, the productions are very low, they cannot sustain such an industry. So we think that it is a good coincidence that such development is there, and we want to make sure that the communities benefit from that. We would want them to protect the environment by promoting tree planting, and some of these trees will actually be fodder so that they also feed their animals on them. The last MOU is between the oil activities dependent communities and the oil companies. As you saw in the documentary, some people think that the coming in of the oil companies to drill the oil is actually a mess. It is worse than how they were, and some of them are saying they better live and leave us with the land. But we think that we can change their attitude and tell them, look at what the oil industry is bringing in your area. And we want them to participate in things to do with deciding on corporate social responsibility. How do they participate? Probably they don't know at what level they participate in choosing what can a developer or an investor do for them in the district? And we are challenging them to make sure that they attend such meetings where such decisions are taken. But we also want to enable them exercise their constitutional right to access information on all developments, because they seem not to be informed about the developments. We also want to promote their participation in ensuring environmental safeguards, because we know that the drilling of the oil and in this climate change era, the communities really need to be alert and fully participate in ensuring environmental safeguards. But we also want to promote good working relations between the oil companies and the local communities. These are some of the moments captured during the drafting of the MOU, and we also privileged the RDC attended together with the district chairman, and we met communities in Chigwera and the Bolisa sub-county. Yeah, thank you. So,
Okay, we have about 30 minutes for discussion. So feel free, yeah, the last one. I would like to appreciate the presenters. My name is Kabishanga, I work with the Center. You have talked about the resistance issues, the issues that concern the landscape of the destroyed. We were allowed to that issue of restoring them. I think even the biodiversity, the ecosystem, those wild animals that are focusing on, they may end up dying or extincted because of climate change. So as we are getting out to the community, the sub-county, there are surrounding areas of Uws National Park. The Uws staff and the communities, they don't seem not to match on the 10% that is supposed to go back to the communities. The surrounding communities don't appreciate the way the system is handled. They seem that the Uganda Wildlife Authority seem to impose some initiative on them. There should be some initiatives stemming from the communities' priorities. I've seen you have talked about the pastories. You have talked about the fishing participate, the youth participate. In fact, I can summarize. Okay.
Thank you so much, the presenter. The presenters, my name is Immaculate. These are informal questions and goes to the presenter too. You mentioned something about the hay. Is this something they've been doing before, or it is your initiative? And how is it going there? Have they started to use that, or you're in the initial stages? Then also you talked about the MOUs. And the first presenter also talked about the different activities they have implemented to bring the harmony between the protected area and the communities. And you're saying you're encouraging these same activities. So does that mean that, and you said the MOUs are already there, does that mean they formed the UWA and the protected, the communities, they formed the MOUs, but they never implemented these activities, and you're trying to follow up that, or you're creating them and then implementing them? I don't know is it because of oil, of all the communities near protected areas, you chose Bulisa. Why Bulisa? Thank you.
And I have 3 brief points. One, for UWA representation. Yeah, somehow you talked about, in your presentation there was a statement to do with biological responsibility. For specific reasons, I would suggest that you replace biblical, whatever it is, with the faith, so that we are all included. Secondly, you showed a picture of the road. This cuts across with the wildlife representation. The road seemed okay. In my view, I thought it was a bit narrow, and since it is in that very potential, an area with a big potential for development, that is oil and gas, why can't we have it tarmac? Why can't the community, so that it is even more conducive for the traders and other developers to be there, so that these people can benefit from that? Then back to wildlife society, specifically, the project was liked by the targeted communities, as seen in the documentary. Now, what was it? I mean, they liked the sensitization and awareness. Part of it was very good, but could that be at the stage of having some kind of like a community action plan, or it's still in the preparatory stage? I didn't understand whether there was an element of having a community action plan for the specific area as you showed us, or it was at the stage of awareness and sensitization alone. Okay, thank you. I hope the message is clear.
You mean, I don't know whether you meant the areas outside protected areas. Both, yes, because the inside, since you come from Chibale, I will definitely tell you that you know how we are on our restoration programs. We are actually eradicating pines and planting indigenous trees. In other areas also, it's not only in Chibale, we have areas of Mount Elgon. We are also doing lots of restorations. We are also working outside the protected areas to ensure that communities can be able to harness from those activities of conservation. If you go to Muganyanga now, communities no longer go to the park for bamboo. There's a lot of bamboo which you have encouraged communities to plant, and now they have started harvesting from their own woodlands. So restoration of the landscape is one of our activities together with our partners. We work definitely with those partners like WWF, UWS, and I think all is going well. Then you talked about I suspect this must be the 20% revenue sharing. Because we just said 10%. It's actually not 10%, it's 20% of the gate collections. I think you need to take that correctly. So, you are wondering why we're not taking community priorities. Definitely, before a project is implemented, we discuss. Communities have got their own views. Communities come with views like schools, roads, but then the government is also implementing similar projects. And actually, our projects are not meeting the reason why protected areas are there. Because once you implement roads, you construct roads, schools, and the government does the same, then government is bigger than us. It swallows all our projects. Sometimes we don't have enough money to complete those projects. And so once you bring a project up to, let me say, window level, and then government comes and completes it, it becomes the government what? The government project. Now, when it comes to problem animals, let me say wildlife community conflicts, when you build a school, there is very little relevance. But when you get a trench in place, you basically empower the community. Because with that trench, communities will be able to plant their crops next to the protected area, and they will harvest a lot. But if you build a school, the child who is supposed to go to school will continue coming to the garden to come and guard the garden against the baboon. And so even when you put a structure there, it will be useless because there will be no students who will be there. It will be only the students far from the park who will get educated in that school. So that's why sometimes we do not refuse, but we guide the communities in coming up with projects that are going to help them, both at the community level and at the household level. So even if they are our own MOUs with communities, UWS doesn't have national parks. They help us to implement, okay? So we work together with them to get communities together. If you watched properly in that documentary, the small video, you realize there was a man who was saying, these rangers are bad. Rangers are not hospitable. And in such circumstances, you need a middle ground. And this middle ground is the UWS. When you get partners like those who can be able to bring communities together with the park, it becomes easier to restore relationships. So I think you shouldn't confuse the two. Biblical and faith, I agree with you, I will do that. I quickly rush to the Bible because I don't know how I will quote the Quran. I don't know what the Quran says. So thank you very much. I have got that, I picked it. The roads are narrow and you need them tarmacked. I think projects, possibly we can talk about oil. But with our revenue sharing funding, it's a very small fund. And it cannot manage tarmacking some of those projects. But basically, I think at the level of UWA, we can be able to open a road and maintain it. There are so many roads in Uganda. Even if you go to districts like Muria, government has failed even to put a tarmac road, Karamoja. Who are we, UWA, to have a tarmac road in every corner of the protected area? I think that would be a little bit ambitious to do. But with the oil, yes, we shall focus and we shall work with them to see whether some of those areas. But I'm sure even the oil is not going to contribute to all the tarmacking of all the roads. I think currently we are looking at the Bulisa, Masindi Road. That's it.
Joel, short intervention.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Someone was concerned that the youth and the gender aspects, but also we shall continue to emphasize this. Helmeting, the communities have not yet begun making it, but it is very easy. What you need is the grass and the human urine and some other maybe place where you keep them a bit. So it is an easy process. The only problem will be that they will not have the grass. So they'll need to collect the grass from the park. Yeah, that is the link that we want to make. So we plan to implement it as a project. MOUs, yeah, some MOUs have already been signed, like the one for collecting grasses, like we showed you the women collecting grasses along Ubungo Wildlife Reserve Road, buffer actually. And they collect that grass and it helps control also the wildfires from spreading. So they keep the grasses low so that the fires do not cross the other side. However, we are suggesting other MOUs for the communities to access certain resources from the park. I think that is clear now. Why Lisa? Uganda Wildlife Society is one of the 3 NGO consortium partners that are funded by the Ecosystem Balance Project. So the Ecosystem Balance Project has 3 NGOs implementing its activities. One of them is Uganda Wildlife Society implementing the activities in Ulisa. But we are all along the Albertine Rapid. Then we have Afiego. Afiego is implementing its activities in Koima. And then in NAPIC, National Association of Professional Environmentalists, they are implementing their activities. Still under Ecosystem Balance, but they are implementing them in Kamwenge and Kasese. So that's why we are in Ulisa. We are bound in Ulisa and probably also in the documentary so that we cannot cross to Congo. That probably with no funding we shall cross. Somebody asked about whether communities came up with an action plan. During our trainings, we are still in the initial stages. We trained them. Actually, what happened, they identified what they need, the technologies that they would want to adopt, but they did not have the skills and capacity. So we provided that, we went and trained them. So in our next phase, we are going to put up things like demonstrations on their farms and also in certain areas to identify. Yeah.
Thank you.
When you're concluding your presentation, you talked about big support from the government, and you pointed out the oil actually that is being exploited. My worry is that I don't know if you have another plan B in case this money is not channeled into perhaps into supporting the conservation of biodiversity, because just like our president saying that this money is, I don't know, he said this money is meant to do some other things, and actually it has already started doing other things like the buying of jets. But I don't know if we shall have to wait until this money is channeled probably in UWA to see that we have more effort being channeled into making sure that we conserve nature.
Thank you. Next one.
Thank you for the presentation, especially the UWA person. I remember when you gazetted the bill in 1992, there were a group of people called Dibatwa living there. They were left without land. Up to now, they were called Dibatwa in Bwindi. Today they don't have land, and the only thing they want is land. Do you have any plan of giving them land? Secondly, I was also in Katerera, and I happened to have seen a serious problem of human-hippo conflict. And to our amazement that there is little intervention being done. Do you have also any plan? And lastly, you talk of revenue sharing, where you give communities 20% of debt collections. But here when we are giving statistics, you say that Uganda gets approximately $800 million US, of which actually if you calculate 20% of that, it means the communities would be getting 1 trillion per year. But when you go actually to get collection, that's very little money. Can't you revise your money so that at least the communities get 50% of get collections, or at least you give them 20% of the total income from tourism? Thank you.
Very much, presenters. I'm Roy from Kerala. Mine goes to the first presenter. You talked about animals grazing together. And I have an issue whereby, what if these animals happens to be of the same species and they can interbreed? The wildlife or the wild animals with the domestic animals. Don't you think there will be issues of new species coming up which will lead to the death of the whole species? Thank you.
And the communities, for example, we can't deny that currently the numbers of tribes have reduced due to the economic crisis in Europe and other parts of the country, of the world. And so, if these numbers drop and we can no longer afford to raise the figures that we have seen, do you have plan B of how we shall go about to make sure that we can sustainably protect the wildlife? Then two, the first presenter talked about attitude change. He talked about attitude change, and from where I come from in my career, it is hard for a student to think that he's attached to his or her environment, or even wildlife matters. These students don't know that it is as important as their lives to care about their environment. So, are you looking at changing the lives of those who are just close to what matters to you, or even the attitudes of those who seem to be allied, and could probably have the knowledge and experience to make the change that is needed? Or, because definitely when you guys leave, it is also going to come to replace you, but you don't have the right attitude, and you're not particularly interested in what you guys are doing. Therefore, do you have a plan for that as well? Thank you.
We have been through other interventions. So we are looking now at oil. If oil possibly is the savior, are we going to benefit out of it? And so if we have to benefit, probably some of these issues will be addressed so that then wildlife can be able to live together with the communities next to them. But basically, even when oil is not there, we have got strategies. We want to market our tourism industry. And once we market, I think that also caters for his question. Once we market, we, as much as possible, would like to raise the tourism number. If the tourist number increases, then we should be able to get more income. But more so, we want to protect our wildlife. If we can be able to raise the numbers in those areas where numbers are very low. For example, if you get to Kaboya, Kaboya is neighboring Lake Albert and Murchison Falls. If we raise those numbers, Murchison Falls is okay, but Kaboya, if we raise it, we go to Semliki, we go to Bokaramateniko, which is also in the east, then we should be able to generate a lot of money, and each community, communities around those protected areas should be able to benefit. And if you look at protected areas like Murchison Falls, Queen Elizabeth, Windy, Lake Mburo, where there is adequate revenue, you will be surprised. Communities there, the attitudes are different from the attitudes in Semliki and the Karamoja region. Just due to the factor that I pointed out, insufficient benefits. Once you have insufficient benefits from a protected area, the attitudes of the communities will definitely be very poor. But if the income they get out of the activities that take place in the protected areas is high, then the attitudes are also good. The Batwa. The Batwa, yes, they were evicted from the Windy. By the way, some of them were already out. But what I want also to tell you is these people were housed. Some of them have got land. If you go on the southern part of Windy, you realize that the Batwa were given land. If you go to Semliki, the Batwa were even given houses. But the problem is just the culture. When in Semliki actually, because these people were given Mabati houses and they were not used to Mabati, when it rained, there was a lot of noise for them. That was too much noise. And then whenever there was too much sunshine, it was too hot for them inside there. So they decided to abandon the houses and they reverted to their traditional way of living. And so I think it's a matter of culture, but also around Windy. Look at the Vatwa around Mugahinga. Those ones, actually, you find them in the streets of Kisoro. They are all the time begging. Those who are begging have got little, and they are even living on the rock. Those actually who concentrated on their gardens are earning a lot. But all the same, I think generally, whenever government puts in place a program like protected area gazettement and then evicts the people, it's not then the responsibility of UWA to resettle such people. It's the responsibility of government under the Ministry of OPM. So it's actually the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's office, which is supposed to pick up that responsibility. Because as UWA, we are custodians of wildlife. I don't know whether you know that. We are custodians of wildlife, and sometimes we come in to help. So that's what our responsibility is. Revenue sharing. We are generating, you said we are generating $805 million. Actually, that's a general figure for the whole nation, the whole economy. If a tourist comes in, goes to Abujagali, another tourist comes here, stays in Kampala, and stays in Sheraton, in Africana here. That is the amount which we are getting out of all those tourists. But as for the national parks, we are generating about 16 million US dollars only out of the 805. But then you also need to take note that Uganda's protected areas are 11% of the whole country. And just imagine 16 million US dollars managing 11% of the country. And this is the country which is managing billions of dollars. So I think we cannot really match with that. We can't give too much to the communities because we only cover about 70% of our budget on an annual basis. But what we are thinking is, if we continue to generate more money, then we should be able to give out more money too. And the other strategy is, if I live next to you and I keep giving you money, you not think for yourself. The best way is to give you a net and you go and fish for yourself. So that's what we want to give to the community. Empower them to have a way how they can generate their own money. New species between wildlife and the livestock, I think that would be a big myth sometimes. But if it happens, it will be a creation, I think, which we shall put on earth. But don't expect a zebra to mount the ground. You know, there are those genetic differences. I don't know whether you're a scientist or you're an artist, but you need to go back to biology and find out what happened. Yes. We have got those genetic differences that even when a horse or a zebra mounts a cow, definitely that will be a waste of energy. It will never give out anything. But let's look at gene mutation and see what will happen. But I'm sure it won't happen. Plan B, I think I've talked about Plan B for revenue. Okay? And the community attitudes, you are wondering, if you as students, you cannot change, how sure are we that we are going to change the community? Was that the kind of question? Because I didn't pick you properly. Or is it the attitude of the community youth? One of the ways you are getting changed in terms of community, attitude, is the education that you are getting. That's one of the ways. Two, at the moment, if we get employment, okay, we do not go for the old man like me, or my professor here. No. We actually look for the youth, so that as we phase out we people, there should be those people that are coming, like you, should be able to take up that mantle and go ahead with the responsibility which we are going to leave behind. But also at the park level, we have been focusing at both genders. Actually, gender issues are a key issue at the park level. We focus on men because men have their own issues. We focus on children, usually at the schools, and we also focus on the women. So we have all those ages and generations into consideration. Probably we need to initiate projects for the youth so that as we concentrate on the women, on the men, and the children, then the youth also should be able to come up. But that's a lesson for me to take to my community conservation staff so that they can also do something about the youth. But if you go, we have got this youth forum, most especially those who have been found to be poachers. We are reforming them, changing their attitudes, and giving them employment within protected areas so that they can be able to change and move with the conservation. Okay.
The communities and wildlife. But the new factors coming, like now the extraordinary of oil, and affecting both the communities and the wildlife, as we have seen
documentary. And in view of these new developments, I'm wondering how far has UWA also and our association, for example, the last past year, been able to enrich the existing policies on wildlife conservation in view of these type of changes? I'm asking, for example, we've had these memorandum of understanding made between the various parties, for example, police. Are those based on the existing policies, or they need to be still entrenched into the policies? For example, has our association been able to interface with say the relevant ministries on energy, that's because of oil, tourism, I don't know which ministry she is now, and also the relevant parliamentary committees, so that we can entrench the necessary amendments in the policies and to address these new factors. Thank you very much.
Very true, but you did a good job. I have two issues. I don't know whether I'm out of south of the world. I last heard of the wildlife club institutions about 10 years ago. I don't know whether they're still running. Those of you who are still in school, but it would be very, very good if we started the sensitization about conservation and loving your nature through the wildlife clubs in schools, in institutions, to be able to actually appreciate what nature has for us. And actually, in that way, we can also promote domestic tourism. Just in case the bazoon will not come, we are able to sustain our hotels and then the people on the ground. I would have loved to also see the people in Blista being employed by UWA and the UWS, and that has actually worked for me. If you took a case study of Kalangala and the Indicoma oil and whatever, it seems the situations might seem to be similar. What those people did is that they have engaged the local person, and they are able to see the benefits, what he was talking about, the benefits. When somebody actually, what would a 45-year-old think about a school? To him, it's past him. What he would want to see is that he can buy a border board or something like that. So I would suggest that you employ the locals somehow. You must find a way. Honestly, you must find a way. Apart from sensitizing them, and then attitude change actually should come from you. Who sent this? The BMUs, beach management units. These are people who have gone to school, but they are so uncouth in behavior. I don't know whether it's an attitude they get from training camp or whatever. So uncouth that, and they don't know how to handle the person who has not gone to school, this person who has never, there's always that conflict. Thank you.
Sam from Uws district. Mr. John, when we were talking about interventions, one of the interventions about wildlife and human conflict, we talked about the trench. In the Roverese, the animals are stubborn actually. They push back the soil to the trench and cross to gardens. True, the communities in the Bunyaraguru have negative cultural beliefs of eating animals, especially hippos, that say they are delicacy meat, called the Shimani Chavita in the local language. And three, most of the farmers around Katerera rent where they cultivate their crops from. I don't know when it comes to revenue sharing, who benefits the landowner or the tenant. And what are your current interventions about the human-hippo conflict, which has even attracted the presidential or something attention? Finally, I don't know whether I can get your presentation as a handout, or I can talk to you after the meeting.
My question is, what are your plans to develop Uws as a good tourism site in terms of facilities? There are new like roads, and the other suggestion I have is that to change the attitude of people in prison, it could be good if you could employ the same people who are in the regions So, for example, like the citizens of the visa, in the way that they will be acting as an example to the rest of the community, and it could change the attitude of the rest.
For them guidelines, and that's what we are following. We have had tourism interventions in areas where there is oil exploration. We have kind of moved away from there. Actually, we have like developed other facilities out of the oil area, so that in the event that the oil area is not attractive to tourists, we should be able to divert them to other areas where they can still view wildlife. Then we also do a lot of EIA reviews. There is nothing that takes place inside that protected area before we affirm or we consent to it. And that is through EIA reviews. And so we work with NEMA, we work with the Ministry of Energy, we work with wetlands, we work with the Directorate of Water, and the other agencies, local governments. So all these are involved in policy streamlining and EIA reviews. But what I want to tell you is we are committed to assuring that there is no impact within protected areas. And we know that oil is an infinite resource. It's going at one point, oil will be no more. But wildlife is going to live until this earth comes to an end. So we are committed to assuring that it survives until the end of the world. And then the wildlife clubs, are they still there? Yes, they are actually still there. Recently we held some bit of competition of these children, and those who won, we took them to Murchison for a holiday, free accommodation, free transport, and free food. And then we gave them some little allowance just to encourage them, so that others also can compete. These things are there, only that there is lack of funding for the wildlife clubs of Uganda. There isn't much. So I think that's where the problem is. Employment of the Balisa, I don't know whether you are from the Balisa for sure, but the truth is, we have, for instance, let me see how many districts are around the Murchison Falls. They are about 8, okay? So when we are employing, we cannot select only people from Ulisa. We have got to satisfy the needs of all these districts. So basically, if you look at the employees of Murchison Falls, 90% is local community, 90%. Actually, the whole of Uganda Wildlife Authority. We don't employ people from very, very far from protected areas. Most of our rangers are usually people from within the districts. So I think that one is catered for. And you also, someone talked about developing Ulisa as a tourism destination. I think that person doesn't know what is happening in Ulisa. Actually, if you go to Ulisa now, there are a number of lodges that are cropping up near Murchison Falls. You go to Mubako, there are a number of lodges along there. And so that's where we are starting already. Now, we are encouraging the private sector actually to invest in tourism. With the time, let me say when this oil business probably becomes, we reach the production level, you will see lots of developments, and because of those developments, also hotels will come up. So it's a process, it's just not one day. But you go to Bugungu, I mean to Ulisa around Waseko, you will find lots of lodges are coming up. Animals push the soils back into the trench. Yes, most especially elephants. They are very clever animals. If you dig, you excavate a trench and professionally they will definitely push the soil back. But usually what we do, we push, when you are excavating the soil, you put it on the community side, okay? If you put it on the park side, when they reach the trench, they push back the soil. And because they want to create a crossing point. So we have already learned that, and now that's the technique. When we are excavating a trench, we put the soil on the other side of the trench. The Banyaruguru eat hippo, and they like it as the kinywani cha chovita. Yes, that's a culture. It's a culture, and the cultures don't just go. Definitely, cultures' attitudes change with time. But what are we doing? One of the interventions is through patrols. The second one is through community awareness. And so we are even trying to see whether we can create activities that are going to occupy the communities. At household level, we are encouraging meat production through goat rearing. And we think that if we have some of these things done, then we should be able to deter. But you know, culture is very difficult. And by the way, it's just a belief for nothing. If Munyaruguru doesn't eat a hippo, she will produce for sure. There is no special facility, fertility facilitator in a hippo. I think it's just one way of making sure that they access hippo meat. Who benefits? Some of those people hire land, and others are the owners. For us, anyone who lives within the parish is a beneficiary. We don't segregate whether you are hiring land or you are the owner. As long as you live within the first parish from the park, you will benefit from revenue sharing. Our plan is to develop police. I think that one I've already answered it. Did we exhaust?
I think you have. But very briefly.
Yes, at the village or at local level, we normally formulate bylaws. Among the communities also, maybe at sub-county level or parish level, they form their bylaws and they follow them. And actually we have a draft policy brief that will be out. You will receive it on your emails. Wildlife clubs, yes, they are there in schools, but like my colleagues say, they need more funding. Employing local communities, that is true, we have some staff from Lisa, but also beyond that, we think that it is beyond employment, but we want to emphasize participation of the local communities. And even right here, we have representatives from two civil society organizations from Lisa. One of them is Birudo, Mr. Oye American. We are working with him, and he's working with the livestock keepers. And then we have Maz Robertson. She's from Soft Power Education, and she's working with wildlife resource dependent communities. And there are other three more that were unable to come. So participation is very key. Yeah, how we can make Ulisa a tourism destination, like he said, this is really for me, but also as Uganda Wildlife Society, we want to emphasize community tourism. Because what really happens is the tourists come from Hoima, go through Ulisa and enter the park. And they put all their monies into the park. But we want to create avenues where the tourists will be able to spend some money in Ulisa. And it's through such initiatives like hotels. We want communities, for example, to trade their culture. If a tourist is on their way to Makshon, and they stop and have a meal of a baboon and enjoy a tale of maybe their origin, we are going to create such things amongst the communities. Thank you.
We invite MPs to come here. Usually our activities also coincide with their parliamentary business, and they usually don't turn out in good numbers.